I was walking yesterday morning and it was drizzling a little bit. And so I kept going and I got about half a block from my house and it started to rain a little bit harder. And I realized I had a choice to make. And with that realization that there was a choice to make, there was anger. I was mad at the rain. And I stopped and just like stood there for a moment and just um, endured the rain for a second, angry about it. And I smiled to myself and I started to just think about uh, that anger reaction. And I realized I've been in a fight with the rain for a long time, like hating the rain. And I thought, I don't want to be in a fight with the rain anymore. So I decided to actually just walk like I normally would and not walk any faster or not try to like brace or try to protect myself in the way I would do if I was, facing an enemy, but just walk and just let the rain be the rain. And as I was walking, I was thinking about, kind of just tracing this history of anger against the rain back. And I don't know really when it started, but it's been with me, I think, since I was um, at least a preteen. And I kept going, and I realized there was a point where I wasn't in a fight with the rain a little bit earlier than that, when I was probably 8 or 9, and I was a Boy Scout. And we would go camping, and I actually loved the rain. I thought it was really cool to be out in the woods getting rained on and getting to wear those ridiculously big, like we had those army ponchos that just are just, you know, they wouldn't be designed by any fashion designer or anything, but they worked really well. I thought it was really cool to be out in the rain. You're not supposed to do that usually. You have to be inside to get all dirty and messy. And to see if you could do the things like that you would normally do on a camping trip, but are harder in the rain, like cook or start a campfire. So I used to love the rain, and then at some point I started to be in a fight with it. And I think maybe part of that was on another camping trip. We went to West Point, and it was, I don't remember what time of year it was. It must have been like April or May. And the campsite was a big camping trip with a lot of other Boy Scout troops. And the campsite my troop was assigned to was on the side of a hill, and it was very rainy that night. I don't remember why, but I had this 8-man tent. I don't know how that happened, but my parents got me an 8-man tent. I probably fooled them into getting me an eight-man tent. That's probably how it happened. And by the end of the night, it was raining so hard, everybody else's tents pretty much had collapsed. So I had 9 or 10 other scouts with me in this tent. And at some point, somebody rolled through the side and ripped a hole in it. And in the morning, if you've ever had to put away tents and camping gear in the rain on the side of a hill with like a mudslide, it might sour your opinions or feelings about rain. So I don't know if that was the beginning of it, but I just sort of noticed that I've been in this fight with the rain, just like hating it, angry at it. And when I would sort of be out in outside when it would start to rain, I immediately started to brace myself and have a sense of almost like panic. I need to get out of the rain. So I was thinking about this, and as I was walking and paying attention to just my posture and my bearing and my sort of stance toward the rain, and noticing how like the default was to brace, and then just sort of coming back to just letting it rain. And what I noticed is that one of the things about rain is It wants to be very intimate with you. If it's unwelcome, it can feel intrusive. But really, it just wants to make contact with you and just get very close to you. And it was kind of a nice warm rain yesterday. So as I let the rain kind of soak me and I stopped fighting against it, it became just a part of my reality. Actually became me. There was a point at which when you're out in the rain, you kind of become one with the rain because you're just soaked. And at that point, there isn't anything to do except just be soaked. In a Tenzo Kyokun, Dogen's instructions for the cook, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend you do. Dogen talks about, on the surface, instructions for how the Tenzo or the temple cook should go about his or her job. But really, it's a profound instruction manual for the importance of paying attention to your stance or posture towards life, everything you do. Fukan Zazengi is very much about posture and approach to doing zazen on a cushion. Tenzo Kyokun is very much about adopting the zazen posture in your life off the cushion. You've heard me talk about Jijuyu Zanmai, or self-realizing samadhi, or another way of thinking about that is the self-receiving and using the self, kind of the big universal self, receiving and using the self. And in Tenzo Kyokun, Dogen talks pretty extensively about that. And I want to just share a couple of things from Tenzo Kyokun about posture towards life. By the way, before I get into that, so this is the kotsu. This is a traditional teaching stick of Zen teachers. And if you notice, it's essentially just a model of the spine. So the symbolism is pretty clear. This is what we practice. Sitting up straight and having a particular posture towards our lives. So at one point in Tenzo Kyokun, Dogen talks about two encounters that he had with two different tenzos, two different temple cooks, that really had a profound impact on him. And I want to just tell you about one of them. So Dogen says when he was at Mount Jiantong, a monk named Lu from Quyangfu was serving as tenzo. And one day after the noon meal, this is Dogen speaking, I was walking to another building within the complex when I noticed Lu drying mushrooms in the sun in front of the Butsuden. He carried a bamboo stick, but he had no hat on his head, and the sun's rays beat down so harshly that the tiles along the walk burned one's feet. Lu worked hard and was covered with sweat, and I could not help feel the work was too much of a strain for him. His back was a bow-drawn taut. His long eyebrows hung down. So Lu was pretty old. I approached him and asked his age, and he replied that he was 68 years old. Then I went on to ask why he never used any assistance. And he answered, "Other people are not me." "You are right," I said. "I can see that your work is the activity of the Buddha Dharma, but why are you working so hard in this scorching sun?" And Lu replied, "If I don't do it now, when else can I do it?" Commenting on this passage, Okamura says, "No stability is to be found in life other than living it out as it is." We will be able to comprehend the reasoning behind the principle of becoming emancipated from our pain and suffering by just being resolved to living through it as it is. He goes on to talk a little bit about an experience he had when he was a young monk and he got really, really ill, and he was too ill and too poor to really have medical attention. So he essentially just, you know, toughed out 105 fever and couldn't eat and was thinking, he might die. And what he said is, through that experience, he realized that when he stopped fighting the pain and he just let it be inside him, the burden of the suffering was lifted. And he said, "I've always felt this was an extremely valuable experience in my life." But he goes on to say something very important about that. I'm sure all of you have been through really difficult experiences in your life. And, maybe you get through it and you think, okay, well, I'm going to be better prepared to deal with the next difficult experience. And then another one happens and it floors you again. And you're just like, why can't I just, I've already been through this before. Why is it hurting again? Why can't I deal with it better? What am I doing wrong? So if you can relate to that experience, this is for you. So Okamura says, however, despite realizing it was a useful experience to realize if he let go of struggle, his suffering was left. He says, however, despite that, if I had to encounter such terrific pain again, I would only be fooling myself if I thought I'd deal with it any better. I'd be fooling myself to think that this past experience would be of any help in breaking through the pain. Nothing ever occurs twice in life, and the next time I encounter such pain, there will be nothing for me to do but live through it just as I did before. Or it could be that the next time I won't be able to endure it, or I may just give up and cry for help. But even then, the one certain thing is that the only person to live through that suffering will be me. He goes on to say, the degree of separation from the reality of life appears as suffering and struggling. Okamura advises us to be mindful of our stance and our posture towards our life. Not just when we are feeling or dealing with difficult circumstances and suffering, but all of the time. And he says that, I love the way he puts it, when we have an evasive stance towards life, kind of like me trying to dodge the raindrops, that kind of stance, we're probably suffering. And if you notice, zazen posture is not an evasive posture. We're not trying to evade anything. We're just sitting with our back straight, open. We could kind of do that even. Head high, dignified, slightly inclined maybe forward, non-evasive. And so, what you might start to notice is just like when you're practicing zazen on the cushion, how if you're slumping, you might, sort of adjust your posture and sit back up. When you're suffering in life, when you're in a fight with the rain or something like that, you might notice what your posture, your stance is. Are you trying to evade circumstances? And if you are, then maybe some of the experiential, physical parts of the practice that are involved in seated zazen can help you in those moments. Maybe just even starting with noticing like what happens if you adopt more of an open, dignified, upright, up, straight up, breathing into your belly, eyes open, letting go of thoughts and just coming back into the present moment, what might happen. And you might notice that, like I did, the rain isn't your enemy. And then the next time you're out in the rain, walking around, you might notice that anger and the fight comes back. And then you might think, oh, well, why can't I just have a different relationship? But you haven't experienced the same rain twice. And that's why practice never ends. That's why it's so important to continue to come back and practice. Practice the posture of zazen while we're sitting, and practice the posture of zazen in our stance towards life. And thankfully, we have moments where we notice we're getting into a fight, or we slump over in zazen, or our minds are distracted, because all of those experiences are our friends. They're there to remind us that we have neglected our posture. And invitations for us to close the gap that we've set up between ourselves and our life, and just come back to just being one with our lives. So one of my favorite sayings, and that's been rephrased and changed about a bit now and again, but it was one of the things that I really connected with early in my Zen practice, is a paraphrasing of something Dogen said, which is the life of a Zen master is one continuous mistake. Zen practice is noticing when we make mistakes and then readjusting our posture.